Hi. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Oh, that's my dog, Cody. I'm Laura Thomas. Hold on, come up here, Cody. Cody, come here. This is Cody. Izzy, you want to come up here and say hi? Come here. This is Izzy. They would like to participate in this live stream, but I don't know how they're going to behave. So we'll see. Thank you for coming. Looks like there are 20-something of you here. Thank you for joining me. I have no idea how to live stream, so hopefully I'm doing it right. I don't know about you, but I have been staying home a lot lately, and I'm getting a little bit bored. As you can tell, I'm wearing my pajamas right now, although I did put on my very fancy jacket for you guys. This is the most dressed up I've gotten all week, and I figured we needed to do something together today. So I want to share with you this new book written by me, Laura Thomas, and illustrated by the amazing Donovan Andrews, my friend, who is watching right now. Hi, Donovan. And I will show you some of his pictures as I read the book. I wish I could see you all. I'm curious if you're wearing your pajamas, but I'll never know because I can't see you, but I can see that you're there because I see the number of people on my screen. So you are welcome to post questions in the chat box. I think you have to enter your name in order to do that, but if you don't want me to know who you are, you can just enter a pseudonym, fake name, superhero name, whatever you want to do, and I will answer questions at the end. So in the meantime, I would like to read this book to you. All right, you ready? Detective Barksalot and the Dogs with No Names. Chapter 1, Ruffer's Rotten Realization. Ruffer Barksalot wagged his tail as he pranced down the sidewalk. The sun shone on his soft brown fur, warming his body. He didn't have a worry in the world. Little did he know that today would become one of the most important days of his life. Gazing at his owner, Jada, Ruffer admired the way her black braids swished with every step. That's Jada. Jada was just perfect, he thought, and he would live with her in a cardboard box if she asked him to. He might even give up his hidden stash of treats for her if she asked him to. Maybe. As they walked past the pet store, Jada smiled and pointed at the display window, exclaiming, "Aw, look at the kitten!" Ruffer hopped up on his back feet to try to get a glimpse of the cat in the window, but he was too short. As he dropped back down onto all 4 feet, something caught his eye in the pet store parking lot. An impossibly tall man was unloading a cage from a big truck. Inside the cage, something squirmed. Puppies! 3 or 4 wriggly brown puppies, so tiny that each one could probably fit inside of one of Jada's purple sneakers. 2 of the puppies looked straight at Ruffer, their dark eyes filled with sadness. A shiver ran down Ruffer's spine. Wanting to help them, to ask them why they were so sad, he trotted tentatively in their direction. The tall man scowled at him and kicked at the air with his muddy boots, growling, "Beat it, you ugly mutt." Ruffer did not like the man's tone, so he reared up on his hind legs and barked louder than the scrappy chihuahua that lived on his street. Ruffer might be small, but he sure did have a terrifying bark. At least that's what he thought. Jada rushed over and threw her arms around him. "Why would you kick at a little dog?" she asked, making her face look very serious, although Ruffer could tell she felt as scared as a frog in a bucket. The tall man stepped toward her with a frown so big it drooped off the sides of his face. Before he could get any closer, Jada hooked her fingers through Ruffer's collar and tugged him away from the man. As they made their way down the sidewalk, she whispered in his ear, "Keep walking, Ruffer." Ruffer threw one concerned glance back at the pups in the cage and then followed Jada's command. He looked up at her. "Who was that man?" he asked with his eyes. You see, when Ruffer looked at humans with his magical eyes, some people, only the most compassionate ones, understood exactly what he wanted to say. And Jada always understood him. She squatted down and kissed him on the head. "He owns the sunflower farm down the road. Let's just ignore him, okay, Ruffer? I'm scared of him and I don't want him to hurt you. I would freak out if anything bad ever happened to you." Ruffer licked Jada's nose. "But why were those puppies in that cage?" he asked with his eyes. "Why weren't they with their mommy?" Jada cocked her head and her thin braid fell to one side, brushing against Ruffer's face. Her eyelids drooped and she shook her head. I don't know, Ruffer. That nasty old man is always bringing puppies to the pet store. I've never seen him bring grown-up dogs, just puppies. Ruffer's stomach churned with worry. Where did the farmer get so many tiny puppies? And were they all as sad as the ones he had seen today? And where were their mommies? He fixed Jada with his most adorable and convincing gaze. Please, can we go help the sad puppies, Jada? She rubbed his ears and frowned. I can't, Ruffer. I have to go to school. It's the last day of third grade. Ruffer knew she was right. She couldn't miss the last day of third grade. He licked her cheek. Okay, fine. But while you're at school, I'll come up with a plan for helping the puppies. Jada hugged Ruffer as tightly as she could. I love you so much. I'll see you at 3:00. Ruffer ran home feeling excited. He had a mission. He was ready to go. Chapter 2, Dogs Donning Disguises. Turning onto his street, Ruffer ran past his best friend, a big white pit bull named Slobber McGee. Slobber lay in the grass, licking peanut butter from a jar, when Ruffer barked and startled him. Ruffer didn't stop running as he yelled back to Slobber, Come to my house as soon as you can. We have something very important to do today. Slobber called after him, Hi, Ruffer. I'll be there in 2 minutes. Just got to finish this peanut butter. Back at home, Ruffer dashed through the doggy door and into the living room, where he flopped onto Jada's fuzzy purple beanbag. His mind was reeling. He had to find out more about the puppies at the sunflower farm. But how? He didn't want to do anything that would put Slobber or Jada in danger, or himself for that matter. He was only 12 inches tall, and that farmer was gigantic. Ideas swirled through Ruffer's mind, making him feel anxious and hyper. To let off some energy, he found a box of tissues and tore them into tiny pieces until it looked like the carpet was covered with messy white snowflakes. When he ran out of tissues to destroy, his eyes wandered to the television, which someone had forgotten to turn off. On screen, a detective peered through a magnifying glass, examining a broken window and taking notes on a small notepad. Ruffer mumbled to himself, I wish I could be a detective, then I could figure out how to help the puppies. Suddenly, there was a rustle on the porch outside, and Slobber McGee's chubby body started tumbling through the small doggy door. Ruffer jumped up and down. Come in, Slobber. Slobber grunted and drooled as he shoved his fat belly through the doggy door. When he finally plopped through onto the rug, he rushed over to Ruffer and licked him on the face 18 times, a trail of spit dribbling onto the carpet. Ruffer laughed and wiped his wet face on the beanbag. Then he grew serious. Slobber, this morning, I saw cages and cages full of really, really sad puppies. They might need our help. Slobber's floppy ears stood up on his head like white butterfly wings. What? Oh, shucks. Oh, no. That's not good. That's not good. Not good at all, he stammered. Were they big? Were they little? Did they say anything? What else do you know? Well, said Ruffer, all of them were tiny. They looked like they were only a few weeks old, and they were every color imaginable. White and white with brown spots, and gray with brown and white spots. They didn't say anything. They just looked at me with sad eyes, and I wanted to run over and let them out of the cage, but they were being guarded by an old man who's very, very tall and very, very scary. Slobber listened, draping his droopy cheeks on his paws. Ruffer continued. Jada said that the mean-looking man lives in the sunflower farm down the road, and every month he brings more puppies to the pet store. This is terrible. This is no bueno. No bueno at all, said Slobber. We gotta go, Ruffer. We gotta go run down to that sunflower farm to see if there are any more sad dogs. I agree, Ruffer said, standing up with an intense look in his eye. If we can be good detectives, maybe we can figure out how to help the sad dogs. We gotta go to that sunflower farm. But I don't know what the scary farmer will do if he catches us. Slobber's eyes opened wide. We can't get caught, Ruffer. I don't want to get caught. Ruffer rubbed his scruffy chin, thinking. He had always been good at camouflage. His brown and black fur blended in with bushes and leaf piles and trash heaps and all kinds of brownish-blackish stuff. But mere camouflage wouldn't be good enough to protect him this time. He rushed to the closet and pulled out Jada's box of costumes. We'll need to go blend in. We will go in disguise. With his teeth, Ruffer yanked a lion costume out of the box and flung it onto the floor. We can't dress as lions, since there aren't many lions around here. Burying his head in the box, he tossed out ninja costumes and kitten costumes and magician costumes, all the time saying, no, 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 these aren't right. But then he popped up out of the box holding 2 scarecrow costumes. There's a picture. Out of breath, he barked, "This is it! These will work!" Ruffer and Slobber wriggled into the scarecrow costumes. Ruffer's fit just perfectly over his skinny little body. Slobber's was far too small. He only managed to get the costume over his head and one arm. With an embarrassing amount of drool dripping from his mouth, Slobber said, Ruffer, I don't think this costume is going to work. Ruffer dove back into the box. No problem at all. He brought out a handful of hay and glued it onto Slobber's bottom. There you go. Now you look perfect. Chapter break. I just have to tell you, if you can hear any noise, it's my dogs playing on the carpet. So we're going to let them go and move on to chapter 3. You guys need to be quiet over there. I almost wish I could show you, but I can't turn the camera around. Cody, come up here. Come on. Cody, come up here. Izzy, you come up here. Excuse me. Chapter 3. Big Bad Barn. Grabbing the camera that Jada bought last year from the thrift store, Ruffer and Slobber bounded out the doggy door. Looking at Ruffer as he loped along, Slobber said, "This is going to be fun," just before he crashed headfirst into a mailbox. "Ow!" he exclaimed, rubbing his head with his paw. Ruffer licked the bump on Slobber's head and said, "Be careful, Slobber." Skittering down the road toward the farm, Ruffer told himself to slow down and play it cool. A couple of clumsy, tripping dogs in scarecrow costumes were sure to get some unwanted attention. When they got close to the farm, Ruffer saw a large, beautiful field of sunflowers and a charming red barn hidden inside the shadows behind the white farmhouse. He tilted his head. This doesn't look like a place where very sad dogs live. Look at all the beautiful sunflowers. Both dogs lifted their noses and sniffed the breeze. They caught a whiff of something beautiful. What was it? Poop! Dog poop! Ruffer exclaimed. Very quickly, though, his excitement turned to concern. There was something in the smell of the dog poop that wasn't right. You see, dogs can smell a lot more than humans, and with one sniff, they can tell whether another animal is happy or sad, anxious or excited. And right now, mixed in with the most beautiful smell in the world, dog poop, Ruffer and Slobber smelled fear. This place is creepy. I don't like it, Slobber said, trembling. He pointed at the charming red barn. Is that where the smell is coming from? You think that's where the dogs are? Ruffer and Slobber looked at each other with grim expressions. Far away on the other side of the sunflower field, the farmer sat hunched over a tractor, mowing his field and looking the other way. He wore overalls and a wide-brimmed straw hat that cast shadows over his face. Crouching down in his way too tight scarecrow costume, Slobber pointed and whispered, "There's the farmer. He gives me the heebie-jeebies, Ruffer." As Ruffer and Slobber crept toward the charming red barn, the farmer's tractor turned in their direction. He looked right at them. His face was suddenly lit up by sunlight, revealing dark circles under his eyes and that big, drooping frown. The dogs froze, trying to be still as scarecrows. When the farmer's gaze landed on them, he scratched his head as if to say, "When did I put those scarecrows there?" He stood up on his tractor to get a better view. His legs seemed as tall as trees. He was the tallest person Ruffer and Slobber had ever seen. They started trembling and sweating inside their costumes, but they remained perfectly still. After a few moments, the farmer flapped a hand in front of his face as if to dismiss a thought, and then he sat back down on the tractor and returned his focus to the field in front of him. As the scary farmer rode off in the other direction, Ruffer and Slobber let out big sighs of relief. Bellies low to the ground, they continued creeping toward the charming red barn. When they approached the door, they heard the sad howls of 40 or 50 dogs. "This isn't good," said Ruffer. "I know," said Slobber. Behind them, the tractor's engine cut off, and both dogs turned to see the farmer step down off the machine and walk back toward the farmhouse. If he turned just a fraction of an inch in their direction, he would see them. Ruffer quietly barked at Slobber, "Get inside!" Chapter 4. Hounds Held Hostage. Taking a deep breath, Ruffer entered the dimly lit barn with Slobber right behind him. Almost no sunlight reached inside. There were no windows. Ruffer took off his hat as his eyes adjusted to the darkness. What he saw took his breath away. Dozens of dirty dogs in cages barely big enough to stand up in. There were terriers and poodles and pugs and bulldogs, all of them so dirty Ruffer could hardly see their eyes. I don't know if you can see the drawings, but I'll still show them to you. Their heads hung low, as if they'd never had a day of fun in their lives. Ruffer spoke to a small, shaggy girl dog in the cage closest to him. Excuse me, what's your name? Number 3, she said. She squinted at him. Why are you wearing clothes? Ruffer looked down at a scarecrow costume, suddenly embarrassed. Oh, that. Well, I had to. Oh, never mind. Anyway, number 3. What kind of a name is that? She shrugged. The man named us. We all have number names. Why are you wearing clothes? She repeated. Ruffer scratched his ear nervously. I'm supposed to look like a scarecrow. I'm in disguise. He jumped up on his hind legs to look at her more closely. How often does the man let you out of this cage? Hanging her head even lower, number 3 said, Never. Ruffer felt like he might cry. Not even to chase a ball or a squirrel. Number 3 shook her head. I think I've heard of squirrels and balls, but I don't know what they look like. What do you do with them? Ruffer blinked, his eyes glazing over as he thought of all the times he had streaked across a field, his cheeks flapping in the wind as he ran after a squirrel or a ball. You chased them, he said. That sounds fun, said number 3. It is, said Ruffer. He really, really wanted to show number 3 how fun it could be to chase things. She gave him a sad smile. My puppies went to the pet store, so maybe they'll get to learn about squirrels and balls. You're super lucky that you get to do stuff like chasing and running. Ruffer thought about his childhood when he lived alone on the streets before Jada found him and adopted him and gave him piles of toys to chew on all day long. These other dogs deserve to be happy as well. He tingled all over, feeling consumed by the need to help them. Wiping tears from his eyes, he poked his nose through 2 of the bars in number 3's cage. She touched her snout to Ruffer's. I promise you, he said, I will get you out of here. Then, with Jada's old camera balanced in his mouth, Ruffer took photographs of each dog in the barn. Some of them barely opened their eyes, and others perked up and wagged their tails, happy to get some attention. Truth be told, Ruffer wasn't a very good photographer. Most of his photographs were terrible. They were out of focus and tilted in the wrong direction, and some of them only showed the roof or the floor of the barn. But a few of them were just fine, and that was all that mattered. Ruffer bounded over to Slobber, who was talking to a very fluffy girl dog in one of the other cages. Let's go, Ruffer said. We have work to do. Slobber drooled. But I was just talking to my new friend number 11. Ruffer interrupted him. You can talk to her later. We have to go. We don't want to get caught. Slobber nodded, spit flying all over the place. Oh, you're right. You are, Ruffer. I'm glad you're in charge. At top speed, Ruffer and Slobber bounded down the driveway. Just as they made it to the road, the farmer spotted them. He ran after them, screaming, Get out of here, you stinking dogs! If I ever see you again, I'll throw you in a cage. Don't look back, yelled Ruffer. Where are we going? Huffed Slobber, already out of breath. Ruffer pointed toward the schoolhouse on the hill. We can't do this alone. We need help from Jada. Chapter 5. Classroom Chaos. They ran all the way to the schoolhouse, where they snuck in through a window, crept down the hall, and slinked into the 3rd grade classroom. Huddling under a table, Ruffer scanned the room until he spied Jada's bell-bottoms jeans. He loved those jeans because each pant leg was so wide he could climb inside and cuddle right next to her soft skin. The 2 dogs inched toward her. Jada was sitting at her desk, watching the teacher write 3 plus 3 on the whiteboard, when suddenly she felt something licking her toes. She looked down and giggled, squealing, Ew! The teacher, Miss Dawdle, whipped around from the whiteboard and spoke with a sharp edge to her voice. Jada, why are you giggling? Ruffer and Slobber hid under Jada's chair so Miss Dawdle couldn't see them. Jada replied sweetly, I'm sorry, Miss Dawdle. I gotta go to the bathroom. Can I go to the bathroom? Miss Doddle pursed her lips and turned back to the whiteboard, saying, "Be quick about it." Jada leapt up from her seat, hiding Ruffer and Slobber in her bell-bottomed pant legs. "Okay, thanks, Miss Doddle." Together, Jada and the dogs shuffled out of the room. In the hall, Jada laughed and hugged Ruffer. "Ruffer and Slobber, school isn't over. What are you doing here?" Ruffer danced around her, anxious and energetic. Making his eyes as expressive as possible, he whined, "Jada, we need your help. Pronto, ASAP. We found out that the puppies from the pet store come from a place where their mommies and daddies never get to leave their cages, not even to chase a squirrel. We have to convince the scary farmer to let all the dogs go free." Jada understood every word. "Yikes," she said. "That is just awful. I agree. We have to help them." She squinted a bit, thinking, "But how can we convince Miss Doddle to let class out early?" "I'll figure something out," said Ruffer. "Go back into your classroom and wait for my signal." Jada tiptoed back into her classroom and sat down, squirming in her chair. Ruffer and Slobber ran around to the back door where cafeteria workers were throwing away all the leftover food that hadn't gotten eaten during the school year. To his great surprise, one worker placed an unopened box next to the dumpster with a sign on it that read, "Ice cream sandwiches, third grade, Board of Education." Unlike Sundogs, Ruffer could read. Not many people knew this about him. Bottom of the box was written gluten-free, and on the other side of the box, the address said, "From Pennsylvania." Ruffer pointed at various parts of the box and said, "Slobber, I need you to use your big, strong teeth to rip off those words on that part of the box, and that word on the bottom of the box, and that word on the other side." Slobber set to work, tearing out the words that Ruffer directed. When they'd all been ripped out, Ruffer grabbed an empty wheelbarrow and used Slobber's sticky slobber to stick the words to the side of the wheelbarrow so that they said exactly what he wanted them to say. He looked at his creation with a smile. "This is brilliant," he thought. "What does it say?" said Slobber. "You'll see," said Ruffer. A few seconds later, Ruffer wheeled the wheelbarrow onto the lawn just outside the third grade window so that Jada and the other children could read it. Unable to contain her joy, Jada pointed and squealed and jumped up and down. "Look, everybody, there's free ice cream sandwiches outside. The sign says, 'Free ice cream sandwiches for third grade from Board of Education.'" The other children pointed and giggled and said, "Miss Doddle, look, can we go outside?" Miss Doddle craned her gaze away from the board where she had been writing 3 times 5 equals 15. Sharply, she said, "What are you children yelling about?" Jada pointed out the window. "Look, Miss Doddle, free ice cream sandwiches." "Ice cream sandwiches?" said Miss Doddle, trying to hide her smile. "I do love ice cream sandwiches." She tapped her chin. Just then the bell rang, signaling the end of the day. Miss Doddle clasped her hands together and said, "Well, since it's the last day of school, everyone can go outside and get 1 ice cream. After that, you must stay in the yard where I can see you until your parents come to pick you up. Follow me." Miss Doddle opened the door and scrambled outside ahead of the children, grabbing an ice cream sandwich from the top of the pile before the children could take them all. Before the first child reached the wheelbarrow next to her, Miss Doddle had already shoved half the sticky treat into her mouth, and a trail of vanilla ice cream dripped down her chin. The children laughed and grabbed ice cream sandwiches from the wheelbarrow. It was pandemonium. Ruffer loved it. He loped over to Jada. "Let's meet at the playground. Round up all your friends who love dogs and bring them with you." "Okay," shouted Jada as children rushed past her. "I'll see you there." Chapter 6. Creepy Confrontation. A few minutes later, Ruffer and Slobber met Jada on the playground along with 12 of her dog-loving friends. Ruffer looked at the children with great seriousness and spoke with his eyes. "We have a job to do, kids." Several of the children, only the most compassionate ones, understood what Ruffer had said. Jada explained to the other children about the very sad dogs who never leave their cages, not even to chase a squirrel. "Here's what we have to do," said Ruffer, looking intensely from one child to the next. "We'll go to the farm and convince the scary farmer to set the dogs free. Then you can adopt all the dogs and take them home with you, and they'll be the best friends you ever had." Ruffer licked Jada's cheek to show how much fun it was to have a pet dog. Jada squealed, "Ew!" and all the kids laughed. Okay, they said, "we'll do it." Ruffer handed Jada the old camera and looked into her eyes, saying, "Since adult humans almost never understand what I'm trying to say to them, I need you to carry this camera around your neck and tell the scary farmer that you've taken photographs of all his horribly sad dogs. Then tell him that you'll show the photos to everyone in town if he doesn't let the horribly sad dogs go free." Proud to have such an important job, Jada took the camera and carefully hung it around her neck. Walking together in one big pack, the children and dogs marched down the hill to the farm. The mean old man was nowhere to be seen, so they walked right into the charming red barn amidst a swirl of howls and whines. When the children saw all the sad dogs stooping in their cages, they froze and looked at each other with trembling chins. Approaching the cages, they stuck their fingers through the bars and whispered to the dirty pups. Once the dogs realized the children weren't going to hurt them, they lifted their snouts and kissed the kids' fingers. Wagging their tails cautiously, they rubbed their bodies against the bars, begging the kids to scratch behind their ears. The children smiled, charmed by the sweet pups. "We're going to help all of you," Jada proclaimed. "We promise." The dogs in their cages wagged their tails, wondering if the little girl would be able to do what she had promised. The pack of children stomped up to the farmhouse steps and knocked on the door as loudly as they could. The scary farmer opened the door, looming over them. He was so tall they almost couldn't see his eyes. As always, a frown drooped off the sides of his face. He held a shovel in his hand. Spitting on the floor, he said to the children, "What do you pesky children want? And why did you bring those stinking dogs to my farm?" The farmer lunged toward Ruffer and Slobber and growled, "I'm going to throw you in a cage." But the children jumped in front of Ruffer and Slobber so the farmer couldn't touch them. "Please, Mr. Farmer," they begged, "please let the dogs out of their cages. We'll take them home with us. We'll make them happy." "Go away," shouted the farmer. "Those are my dogs, and I'm going to sell them." He pounded his shovel on the floor, and several of the children screamed. Jada pushed to the front of the pack and stood before the farmer with her arms crossed. She pointed to the old camera hanging around her neck. "I've taken photographs of all those sad old dogs. If you don't let them go, I'm going to show everyone in town how you mistreat them, and nobody will buy your sunflowers ever again." A little boy in a blue hat stepped up to stand next to Jada. "Yeah, I'm going to tell my dad not to buy your flowers for my mom anymore." Another little girl stepped up to stand next to him. "My mom does flowers for all the weddings and churches, and I'll tell her never to buy yours ever again." "Cripes," said the mean old farmer, holding up his hands. He spit on the floor and then grumbled, "Fine, take the dogs. Take them all. I don't like them anyway." Chapter 7, Delighted Doggies. "Woohoo!" shouted the children as they ran back to the barn. Full of joy, they unlocked the cages. "Bow wow!" shouted the dogs as they stepped out of the barn onto the earth for the first time in their lives. Number 11, Slobber's new friend, pawed at the prickly green sprigs growing all over the ground. "What is this stuff?" she asked Slobber. Slobber rolled onto his back, showing off. "Grass. This is grass, Number 11. See how soft it is? You can roll around in it all day long." Number 11 imitated Slobber, rolling onto her back. "Ooh, it feels really good on my fur." Slobber jumped back onto all 4 feet, a line of spit dribbling from his mouth all the way to the ground. "Isn't grass awesome? It's the awesomest." Ruffer glanced around the field. Everywhere he looked, dogs and children were falling in love with each other. Over by the barn, a pair of twin girls showered a skinny pug with kisses. In the middle of the field, a small, quiet boy, who almost always kept to himself, giggled as he watched a clumsy bulldog chase a butterfly and trip over his own paws. On the far side of the field, under a beautiful oak tree, a tiny Yorkshire Terrier trembled in fear. He didn't know what to do with himself in this big new world. Whispering, a tiny girl, the tiniest girl in the class, approached the pup with her hand extended and then sat down next to him until he stopped trembling. Eventually, the pup climbed into her lap and buried his head under her jacket. Meanwhile, Number 3 scampered over to Ruffer and Jada and licked them on the face. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. Is there anything I can do for you to show you how grateful I am?" Ruffer smiled. "Well, I know one thing that would make me super duper very much happy. You can come live with us." He looked at Jada, who was rubbing Number 3's scruffy gray neck and back. "Is that okay, Jada? Can Number 3 come live with us?" Jada clapped and squealed and hugged number 3. Yes, but number 3 is not a good enough name for you. A dog as cute as you. We will call you Fluffer Pants. Wagging their tails, the happy dogs followed the children home. Every single one of them was adopted. They loved their new homes, where they could run across fields and chase squirrels all day long. Ruffer had never been so happy. He'd had the best day of his life, so he made a decision. He would open a detective agency to help animals in need. From that day forward, he called himself Detective Ruffer Barksalot. And oh, the adventures he would have. The end. Thank you for listening to my story. If you like the book, you can get it on Amazon, of course, ebook or paperback. I really enjoyed sharing it with you. I don't know if I'm going to figure this out, but let me see if I can. I don't know how to see if anyone asked questions. Hold on. Well, I don't know how to look at the live chat, unfortunately. Oh, looks like I turned off the comments. That's what I get for my first live stream. I guess obviously I have some practice to do, but thank you for watching. I love all of you guys. I can almost picture you there in your homes, and I hope I get to see you sometime soon. If you want to maybe email me and tell me your questions, since I didn't have my comments turned on, my email is laurabama, LAURABAMA @hotmail.com. I would love to hear from you. What did you think? You can also post a thumbs up or something if you want to tell me that you're there, since I didn't have the comments on. And that's it. Thank you for listening. And Cody and Izzy would like to thank you as well. I'll see you next time, guys. Oh, let's see. There we go.